This lecture is meant to serve as an introduction to our study of the play Cathleen ni Houlihan by offering 10 theses about the play. The first of these is that Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about marriage. Marriage forms the basis of the plot, and it's the interruption of a marriage that gives us the action of the play proper. Marriage figures in the play as a force for social cohesion, integration, and social betterment. Marriage allows families to consolidate and expand their holdings in land, but it is also a vehicle for the attainment of respectability. The height of respectability in peasant Ireland, as Yeats describes it, is having a priest in the family. And that's their ambition for Patrick. By becoming a priest, Patrick can evade the problem of primogeniture, the land inheritance system in which all of the land is inherited by the eldest son, leaving nothing, no basis for social mobility, for the younger children.
For women, meanwhile, social mobility under primogeniture meant marriage, or perhaps going to a nunnery, or becoming a school teacher, but mostly marriage, or emigration. So now we are in a position to refine our first thesis. Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about marriage, i.e. the traffic in women, as a vehicle for social ambition in patriarchal society. And this is my second thesis, that Cathleen ni Houlihan depicts a patriarchal society. For stark evidence of this, we need only study the dramatis personae. At the head of the family is Peter Cathleen. Then we are introduced to his son Michael. Then the younger boy Patrick. And it is only then that we are introduced to Bridget Cathleen, Peter's wife, followed by Delia Cahill and the poor old woman. This tells us that we are in a patriarchal universe. The entire family is structured through the father, and Bridget only matters insofar as she is Peter's wife.
Even before the play begins, before we know anything about what's going to happen, we can tell from the structure of the dramatis personae that the logic of the play is patriarchal, heteronormative.
Thesis 3. Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about land. It is a play in which some people are coming into possession of their land, like the Cathleen family, whilst others are being dispossessed of their land, like the poor old woman. The scene of the play is the interior of a cottage close to Killala in 1798, and Pethica gives us for Killala the site in County Mayo of the landing of French troops under General Joseph Humbert in 1798 to support an abortive uprising. But Mayo was also the scene of megadeath during the Irish famine. This is something we'll be coming back to, the temporality of the play. But for now, all we want to note is that when the question is asked in the play, is it in the West that men will die tomorrow? The reference is not just to the 1798 rebellion, but also a haunting memory of 1847. So here again we might refine our thesis. Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about dying for land rather than living to possess it.
A fourth thesis is that Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about money. Throughout this play, the characters are more or less obsessed with this issue, and Yeats is keenly interested in it. He worries that money and a preoccupation with money is making the Irish selfish. So here again, we can refine our thesis. Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about money, in which social mobility and rising expectations, together with incipient greed, threaten Ireland's spiritual decency.
Thesis 5. Cathleen ni Houlihan is a play about strangers. Count the number of times the word occurs in the play. The preparations for the Cathleen family wedding are interrupted by the strange woman, But she has her own problem with strangers, strangers in the house, strangers that she wants to put out of the house. And Cathleen Houlihan is a play about the problem of who constitutes a stranger. Thesis 6. In Cathleen Houlihan, characters are reduced to their narrative function.
We know from the patriarchal logic of the play that what matters about Michael Gillan is that he is Peter Gillan's son. But we also learn that he is going to be married. And similarly, what matters most about Delia Cahill is that she is engaged to Michael. Bridget Gillan matters as Peter's wife, whilst the poor old woman doesn't even need a name. So this is what we mean when we say that Cathleen Houlihan is a play in which characters are reduced to their narrative function: the bride, the groom, the father, the wife. They matter less as people and more as functions of a plot in which Yeats is trying to tell us something about the kind of Ireland he hopes for. A different way of saying this is that in Cathleen Houlihan, narrative and symbolic function preponderate over character development. Yet another way of saying this is that Cathleen Houlihan is a political allegory. The reason why narrative and symbolic functions preponderate over character development in Cathleen Houlihan, then, is because it's not really a story about the Gillan family at all. It's a story about Irish politics. And the families, such as they are only a vehicle for a story about Irish nationalism. A story that Yeats is trying to tell about the direction that Irish society should take. In this cartoon, you see how Ireland is represented as a young woman. And she is being accosted by two suitors. One holds a land bill in the form of flowers, and the other one holds dynamite. It's clear that these figures are meant to represent potentials, forces in Irish society, rather than any particular person. And this is what we mean by allegory. The poor old woman is Ireland wronged, embodied as a woman. And her story is the story of Ireland.
The scenario is prototypical. Here's another version of it. Ireland, as a helpless woman, is menaced by her own base instincts, and the only person that can save her from herself is the law, her guardian.
What we're witnessing here, of course, is an excuse for a rationalisation of colonialism. British law is something that the Irish need in order to subdue the worst part of themselves in pursuit of a civilising society.
And now we can refine our sixth thesis. Cathleen Houlihan is a political allegory that revises colonial stereotypes of Ireland while inheriting their sexualisation of the problem of colonialism. Thesis 7. Cathleen Houlihan pits marriage and materialism against spiritualism and sacrifice.
One of the things that Yeats is saying in Cathleen Houlihan is that the Irish are in danger of becoming obsessed and preoccupied with money. And when Cathleen Houlihan is offered money in the play, she specifically says, "It is not silver I want." And even more explosively in the context of Irish peasant society, she says she has no interest in marriage or men. The poor old woman has little interest in the material realm. She's interested in the spiritual realm, where the heroes that give their lives for Ireland shall be remembered forever, shall be alive forever, shall be speaking forever.
Cathleen Houlihan is a simple play with few props, so you have to pay special attention to the ones that are there. And in the case of this theme of spiritualism versus materialism, the objective correlative of this predicament, this choice of paths, is the clothes, the wedding clothes.
At the outset of the play, Bridget is standing at a table undoing a parcel, and it is the parcel that contains Michael's wedding clothes. I suppose the boys must be having some sport of their own. Come over here, Peter, and look at Michael's wedding clothes. Those are grand clothes indeed. You hadn't clothes like that when you married me, and no coat to put on of a Sunday any more than any other day. That is true indeed. We never thought a son of our own would be wearing a suit of that sort for his wedding, or have so good a place to bring a wife to.
An objective correlative, I have said, is a thing that condenses a theme or themes of the play. A material object, for example clothes, are made to symbolize themes like materialism, the quest for respectability, the desire for social mobility. According to his mother Bridget, Michael is a good steady boy that will make use of his dowry and not be running through it or spending it on drink either. In other words, Michael sounds a lot like the suitor in the cartoon The Two Rivals.
In Yeats's play, as in Punch's cartoon, respectable clothes intimate the respectable option. In this case, either marriage or constitutional politics. By that logic, it becomes clear that Yeats is equating sacrifice and spiritualism with this guy. Thesis 8. Cathleen ni Houlihan can be situated in the tradition of the Irish ashling or vision poem. The example I've given you here is from the father of the genre, Egon O'Rahla. It's called An Ashling, or the Vision. I'm going to let you study this poem yourselves, but there are lots of references to this genre in Yeats's play, including, for example, the direct question about women from the north, and also the references to enchantment. The poor old woman's intention in Yeats's play is to cast a spell on Michael, and we begin to know it's working when we are told, "Look at him, Peter. He has the look of a man that has got the touch." In Yeats's bloodthirsty political allegory, Michael's enchantment spells his death. As a genre, the ashling had its heyday in the 17th and 18th centuries in Ireland. It was a direct response to the Cromwellian plantations and the devastation of the Gaelic order. And what the ashling poems tended to want was a restoration of a Stuart king on the throne of England. By the time Yeats came to respond to the ashling tradition in Cathleen ni Houlihan, much had changed in Irish politics, and the idea of a Catholic king was not sufficient to address Ireland's grievances. By now, the issue was Republican independence. Fired by the French Revolution, the Irish Republican movement saw the young nation of Ireland as having both an ancient pedigree and being yet to be born. And this leads to Thesis 9. In Cathleen ni Houlihan, Yeats offers a vision of blood sacrifice as the necessary precursor to spiritual regeneration.
I've suggested that Cathleen ni Houlihan represents a patriarchal order, and Yeats's shocking message is that this order has to be shattered in order for Ireland to be redeemed. Patriarchal authority has to be subverted, and this occurs at a key moment in the play, when Michael tells his father Peter to hush and listen to the old woman. And here's what she says. "It is a hard service they take that help me. Many that are red-cheeked now will be pale-cheeked. Many that have been free to walk the hills and the bogs and the rushes will be sent to walk hard streets in far countries. Many a good plan will be broken. Many that have gathered money will not stay to spend it. Many a child will be born, and there will be no father at its christening to give it a name. They that had red cheeks will have pale cheeks for my sake, and for all that, they will think they are well paid." Here the poor old woman simply offers the Irish people something they are already familiar with, suffering. But it is her extraordinary account of the grievances of a colony, her enchanting litany of wrongs against the Irish people, that had its electrifying effect both on Yeats's audience and within the play itself, on Michael. Which leads us to Thesis 10. Cathleen y Houlihan is a political allegory in which Irish men turn away from mundane matters of social reproduction and the business of profit or respectability in order to regenerate their nation by marrying a strange woman called Death. And in a confirmation of our theory of the objective correlative, it is at the exact moment when Michael determines that he is willing to do this, that the wedding clothes slip from his arm. It is a moment of pure drama worthy of Caravaggio, and it concludes our first 10 theses on Cathleen y Houlihan.